Okay, perfect. All right, so yes, this is a biggie right now with this meeting. We have the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation with us. We have been waiting for this one, you guys. It took a lot of back and forth, but we are here today and they are here with us. So thank you for joining. I'm just gonna run down the logistics of the meeting and what order we're going on. We're gonna start off with the lovely Miss Hannah, and she's gonna set us off once we go to start. And then we're gonna have those from the DEC, where they're gonna do about a 15-minute presentation and of the question of the Brookhaven landfill, as well as environmental justice. Then we have several questions prepared for the DEC representatives that will be asked by BLARG members. After, we will give a chance for community members who may have any questions that they would still like to ask. So, and just remember, if you do have any questions, type back in the chat and we will go in order. Besides that, I think, Miss Hannah, if you want to go ahead and take us away.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
All right, thank you, DEC, for joining us on this call. My name is Hannah Thomas. I'm a 50-year resident of the town of Bellport, currently North Bellport. I've been an advocate for environmentally issues for almost 30 years before the landfill was even put 4 miles away from my backyard. And also the elementary schools and down one from a homeless shelter. Me knowing about environmental issues because of other landfills that I propose to attempt to close, so I am aware of the effects of landfills. So we at BLARG, we continue to advocate for the transparency of the closure of the landfill in 2024. We also know that the ash fill is no longer an option, but what we are concerned is that they do not want the ash fill there because of the cost, not because of the environmental issue and the effects of our community. So we also are wanting the cleanup and the remediation of this landfill site and some transparency of the closure of it in 2024. So we're fighting for the acknowledgement of the environmental justice issue across the board, and we are not in favor of transporting garbage from our own community into another community of diverse population. So we have some power questions here. Thank you, DEC, for coming. So this is a little bit about BLARG. This is a little bit about our advocacy. So I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, and I guess we can begin our questions.
All right, thank you, Hannah. I'm actually going to turn it right on over to Bob now to introduce the DEC.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I assume you can hear me. Is that right? Somebody give me a thumbs up. Yes, okay, I'm getting thumbs up. That's good. Okay, all right. So, hello, Mr. Mayor. My name is Bob Becker. I'm a former employee of the DEC. I was a regional hazardous waste remediation engineer and the regional hazardous substances engineer in Region 1 back from in the 90s. I retired from the DEC in 1999. So I don't profess to be exactly totally up on the game, but I do know the inner workings of the DEC quite well, and so I'm grateful to you for being here. We really appreciate it. All the members of the people who are on this have been very frustrated in their inability to reach and actually communicate with someone with some clout, I guess, is really the best. The town has been very frustrating in terms of they've been completely obtuse as far as actually interacting with this group. So you, the DEC, as the regulatory agency for landfills and facilities such as that, transfer stations and all that stuff, is, whatever the resolution for the town of Brookhaven for their solid waste issues is going to have to probably, whatever those issues might come. As I understand it now, the Asheville has been permanently put aside by the town for as a next step for them. But that doesn't really solve the problem, because after 2024, garbage is going to continue, solid waste is going to continue to be generated in the town of Brookhaven. And what we want to do is to have a real serious dialogue with the DEC about what ultimately are going to be a solution or solutions for the town in dealing with solid waste. And one of the things that we want to see very much so is a great emphasis on solid waste reduction. Zero waste is the optimum goal, but more immediately is the issue of environmental justice. That is so critical to the people here, because after the landfill closes in 2024, the problems that are attended to the landfill remain, and they continue, and they will be there forever, most likely. And the people in the near vicinity of the landfill have suffered from the effects of that landfill for years and years and years. And so we want to see what the town and what the DEC is actually going to require of the town to do in ameliorating the problems that the local residents suffer from. So I know Mr. Mayor is here. I thought that there were going to be a couple of other people from the DEC, but as Mr. Mayor, are you the only person from the DEC representing the DEC today?
No, not at all. So hi, folks. And if you don't mind, I'll just dive right in, and so we can get to your questions tonight. So my name is Sean Mahar. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Department of Environmental Conservation. Happy to be joined tonight with Rosa Mendez, who's our Director of the Office of Environmental Justice for DEC, and also Aphrodite Montalvo, who is our Public Participation Specialist in Region 1, and also our EJ Coordinator for Region 1. Look, I guess I'll start with this. I know this took a little bit to get scheduled. We were trying to find the right folks, and we recognize that this dialogue is very important to your group, and I think very important to our overall efforts regarding everything that we have going on with the Brookhaven landfill and solid waste management in general. I understand your frustration, and that's something that we wanted to overcome, and that's why I personally wanted to get involved and show you just from the highest levels at the department here that we're paying attention to this issue and paying attention to your concerns, and want an open and active and transparent dialogue with your organization and other concerned residents throughout Long Island. So tonight, and that I would view our conversation with you tonight as just the start. These are very weighty issues that we're dealing with, and obviously I think you hit the nail on the head with regard to the actions yesterday of the town. It's changing the dynamic a little bit now, I think, between the state and our agency and your group and your views, but we want to have an open dialogue with you moving forward, and that's why I wanted to tonight have Rosa be able to join us, in particular I know EJ is a hot topic for this group, and wanted you to be able to hear directly from our environmental justice director directly, so that you can, I think, have a better appreciation for our programs and our approach, and just get to know some of the folks that are working on this issue and this landfill in general. But there is a broader team of professionals and experts that are really overseeing the Brookhaven landfill. And before I turn this over to Rosa to walk through a little bit more of sort of the EJ role and the permitting process and how EJ is considered in that, I think it's important to just recognize that we as DEC have had a very long track record of overseeing the Brookhaven landfill facility. And I think hearing loud and clear the concerns and complaints from the community that have come down and taken action against the facility to make sure that corrections and corrective actions are undertaken. And I know we just put out another community update fact sheet yesterday that walks through a number of the ongoing initiatives that we have underway. And I encourage you all to take a look at that. We'll make sure that you have a link to that, and Aphrodite can provide that, in the chat tonight or just in general, so that you can all see the most recent update that we've put out. But we have a strong commitment to making sure that this facility is run properly, and we know the odor complaints that have come in, and there have been a number of actions that have been undertaken to address that. But I personally can't stress enough how important it is for the community to let us know of the complaints that you're seeing so that we can take action accordingly. We have a complaint hotline that's been established that the fact sheet references and is on our website. We really encourage people anytime that there are issues with regard to the operations of this landfill to make sure that you are reporting that to the department so that we can adequately and quickly get on the ground and address it. We have a monitor on site. We have staff that are regularly overseeing the landfill. We have eyes on the scene at all times. But really, your eyes are the most important ones that we care about. And we need to hear from you if things are going wrong so that we can act quickly on your behalf. Because that is really, as our primary goal of overseeing this facility, is what we really need to see. So again, take a look at our most recent community update, because that does walk through a lot of the actions that we have underway. Also provide some updates on some of the more recent odor complaints that we've received, and some of the and provide some additional information about just how we've approached those, and make sure that the town is taking actions to address those issues. And again, it goes into a lot of our history, and I think a lot of the corrective actions that you're seeing is part of our ongoing commitment to the community to make sure that this facility is being a good neighbor and not causing problems, because that is, again, our primary goal. So I know we'll probably have a robust dialogue on that tonight. I just wanted to provide that quick overview now, and just stress our commitment to you and to working with you all. But with regard to environmental justice overall in the permitting process and just our EJ program, happy to turn it over to Rosa. I know she was having some computer issues with getting on via video, but I know she's on by phone at least. So Rosa, if you could introduce yourself and provide a quick walkthrough to the community just about your program and our approach to permitting, I think that would be great.
Great, thank you very much, Sean. And everyone, I want to apologize that I cannot get my camera to function, but I am very happy that Sean invited me to come on here so that I have an opportunity to tell you a bit about the Environmental Justice Office at DEC. So I'll begin with that description, and then I'll go over two of DEC's environmental justice related policies. And as Sean noted, the EJ office is really a resource for environmentally overburdened communities around the state. That's really how we view ourselves. And in addition to that, one of the roles that we take very seriously is we are a resource to DEC in terms of environmental justice. We provide training to DEC staff, and we work with all of DEC's programs and regions to help them incorporate environmental justice into their strategic plans and for any other initiatives that we hear from communities are important to them. We also have a role with Indian Nations in New York, and we work with them on matters relating to environmental and cultural resources. And we also work, again, with DEC programs on consultation with Indian Nations and providing training around those issues. A lot of our work centers around increasing environmental benefits to communities that have historically been disinvested, and also to address current environmental impacts in overburdened communities. And one of the ways we do that, because we understand the value that community organizations bring to communities, is that we work with those organizations. We also offer funding opportunities to support their work, including capacity building grants, so that they can expand their impact in those communities. One of our largest grant programs is the Community Impact Grant Program, which we've had since 2006, I believe. And that provides funding opportunities for projects that involve improving the environment, that involve educating community members about environmental issues, or can involve sustainability projects. So it's a very broad reaching grant program, but it's specifically targeted at smaller community-based organizations. And that's one way that we make sure that our funding dollars are going to those entities. And I mentioned earlier that I'm going to talk about 2 commissioner level policies related to environmental justice. And those really drive the actions for environmental justice of DEC. And the first one is Commissioner Policy 29, or CP29, which is the policy that sets the general goal of promoting environmental justice for the agency. So all of our divisions, all of our regions, all of our programs are guided by this goal. It also specifically talks about our permit process, and it amends that permit review process for certain permit applications to include an emphasis on community participation in that permit review process. So it puts that emphasis specifically on environmental justice communities, and specifically for new applications. And those applicable permit types are the ones that have an environmental quality impact. So that can include things like state pollutant discharge elimination systems, or SPEEDs, air pollution, solid waste, or hazardous waste. And this policy also has implications for DEC when we are the lead agency for the SEQR, or State Environmental Quality Review. And that would include an environmental justice review. So in the policy, we identify environmental justice areas. In the policy, it actually references them as potential environmental justice areas. And the way we identify those communities of concern is by census block groups. So we're using information from the census, and those are census block groups where at least 51% of the population in an urban area reports on the census to be members of minority groups. In rural areas, that percentage is lower to about 34%. And then in any area, urban or rural, census block groups where about 23% of the census block group report household incomes below the federal poverty level. So the second policy that we have is related to Indian Nations, and this is Commissioner Policy 42. And that really just provides guidance to DEC staff on consultation with Indian Nations, and provides our guiding principle that we relate to those Indian Nations on a government-to-government basis. And it focuses specifically on natural resources, cultural resources, and hunting and fishing. And it also encourages DEC staff to work cooperatively with Indian Nations. So we really try to encourage collaborative projects towards environmental and natural resources. So the last thing I'll note is how is our office organized? And we sit physically, we're in DEC central office in Albany, and we report directly to Sean Mahar and Commissioner Sagos. However, our Indian Nations Affairs Coordinator is in our Buffalo office, and we have regional support in every region of DEC through what I like to call the EJ network. And this is where a regional staff is identified as an EJ coordinator or point of contact for EJ issues. And as Sean mentioned, in Region 1 and joining us today, we have Aphrodite Montalvo, who serves as that point of contact for us in the region. And that was a very quick summary of the EJ office and our policies. And at this point, if Aphrodite wants to introduce herself, I'll turn it over to her, and then we'll turn it over to you all for questions.
Thanks, Rosa. Say Aphrodite, if you want to say a few words quick.
Yes, my name is Aphrodite Montalvo. I'm with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, Public Participation Specialist, and I also serve as the EJ coordinator for the region. So essentially, I did put a link in the chat so everybody can see the community update that we recently uploaded. I really encourage everybody to take a look at that and see all the different, we did have a order on consent with the town in September of 2019, and it really outlines what has been done since then under DEC regulations. And I'll put also my contact in the chat as well, so in case anybody would like to contact me after this meeting, you will have that information as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Aphrodite. So yeah, the link she put on goes into our website. So it really does walk you through the process and procedures that we as the department have in place to oversee this landfill, and everything from the solid waste management regulations and air regulations and odor regulations to the specific solid waste management plans and closure plans for this facility as well. We are a bureaucracy, and we are grounded in our processes, both legal and regulatorily and science-based. And it is a lot of process that we have to follow. And I know that can be frustrating for people sometimes to fully grasp and understand, but it is the way that we've built our programs to effectively oversee facilities like this. And it's what is basically the foundation of our agency and our approach to overseeing and regulating a facility like the Brookhaven Landfill. So wanted to give you that high level walkthrough. And again, we are just a few of the members that are part of this broader team, both within the region and statewide, that are addressing these issues. You know, I heard in the beginning about solid waste management overall being a priority and how we solve the looming solid waste management crisis, as some people call it, facing Long Island. I think we're very sensitive to that, cognizant of that, and trying to work to advance some comprehensive solutions. And fundamental to that is going to be the need to work together collectively at on the fundamental level, working to see the behavior changes that we want to see in the broader populace to reduce waste overall, to get smarter about recycling, to improve our waste management habits, reducing food waste going into landfills from a climate perspective, to making sure that we're recycling right as a society and actually not contaminating our recycling supply while we reduce our waste overall, and looking at potential legislative initiatives like extended producer responsibility and other initiatives. We have a lot that's going on at the department, some that you've heard about, some that's on the horizon as well. But fundamentally, we all have to work together collectively to make the changes that we all want to see happen. And that starts with a dialogue like tonight. So you've heard a lot from us right now. You've got some of the local and regional experts on this from the state's perspective, and we're happy to take your questions now.
Awesome, thank you so much. I just wanted to touch base on a few things that I heard mentioned repeatedly. And just a reminder regarding the Indigenous community, Brookhaven, Albany, no matter where you stand, is Indigenous land. We are on Indigenous land. The Brookhaven landfill also is on Indigenous land. So I just want to make that clear. Technically, all land should be protected and is their land. I also want to touch base on another aspect, the community participation aspect. We at BLARG have continuously attempted to meet with the DEC, and we tried to put our best foot forward and reach out for that community participation. And here we are now with the community participation that we at BLARG begged for. So we're gonna go ahead and start off our questions. Shoshana, you are first.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Shoshana Hershkowitz. I live in Brookhaven in South Setauket. And my question relates to the DEC's mission, which is to conserve and improve and protect New York's natural resources and to look out for the health and safety and welfare of the people of the state and our overall economic and social well-being. And according to your maps, the region surrounding the landfill is a potential environmental justice area. And we've talked about the fact, we've sent it over email, that North Bellport has the lowest life expectancy in all of Long Island, Nassau and Suffolk combined, and that it ranks 80 to 95th percentile nationally on almost all of the environmental justice indicators that come from the national EPA. So the question I have is, do you think there is an environmental justice issue surrounding this existing landfill? If you don't, why? And if you do, why has nothing been done about it by the DEC? Because people's lives are hanging in the balance.
Well, thank you very much for that question. And Rosa can go into more about our EJ program in general and our approach. But I think, we work very closely with the New York State Department of Health on all health related issues. And our regulations are crafted in a way to be protective of public health. So we require facilities to meet very stringent standards when it comes to health-based emissions or problems or things that could be coming or emanating from a source such as a landfill. And it's something that we rely on our partners at the Department of Health to help guide and improve our oversight should it need to be changed and improved. There are a lot of factors when you approach a health-based study or survey of a facility like a landfill that have to be taken under consideration. Maybe Aphrodite can speak about any of the previous health studies that have been done around the Brookhaven landfill, but generally protecting public health is core to our mission. When we look at and find issues that are impacting public health, we take appropriate action. And that's what you can see from our actions that are on the page and in our fact sheet that we recently circulated. It really goes over all the steps that we take to make sure that this facility in particular is not impacting public health adversely, or if we find any threats to that, you can see the actions that we take to make sure that we're holding them accountable, because that really is our goal. And Aphrodite or Rosa, I don't know if you want to expand on that at all.
Well, I can talk a little bit about a little bit of the previous work that the DEC has done with the health department. We did do a community air screening program back in 2013 to 2014 that basically had some canisters that the public used to collect air samples, and then DEC was able to analyze those air samples. They didn't determine that there's any sort of toxic levels in those air samples that were collected by the public at that time. Not to say that there haven't been issues with the landfill. There have been emissions that have occurred that DEC has noted. Oftentimes that's very much helped by when the public calls. When we get definitely a surge in calls through our air hotline, we definitely send our responders out to see what exactly is going on. And we have noted issues there. And we have had several notices of violation occur at that landfill and a series of steps that have been taken in order to make sure that those occurrences don't continue to happen. So we had a notice of violation back in 2016 regarding that, as well as we had another one in 2019 after there was a issue with some wet weather that really severely slowed down some work that was occurring over in the winter. Probably many of you remember that when that happened. And that NOV, what we call notice of violation, we call it NOV for short, basically led the department into an order of consent, which is a legal document that requires the town to take certain actions within a certain amount of time. And that is what we are currently going on. I saw somebody said that the page only goes up to 2019. We were having some technical difficulties. I know I've gone to that page before, and our newest fact sheet has gone up. I'll try to see if there's a method for you to get that or that fact sheet in a better way. Unfortunately, with those technical difficulties happened yesterday. I know that there have been several health studies that have occurred at the elementary school that's close to the landfill. And the conclusions of that seems to have determined that there was no cancer cluster, and there weren't any flags that happened with the health department. I do not have expertise in public health. That is something that can go further into public health officials. That's really all I can say regarding the public health aspect.
So if you don't mind me just following up, there's clearly an issue. There's a pattern of repeated bad behavior by the town of Brookhaven when it comes to this landfill. And that happens as recently as the summer of 2020, where they were fined $250,000 by the EPA, which is just enough money to be inconvenient, but not enough money to follow up and actually do the right thing by this community. And I think that that is the question we have. If the town isn't going to do what they need to do to look out for this community of North Bellport, then where is the DEC? in all of this? Because you're supposed to be the watchdog. So
Well,
the question is, who's watching the people who aren't looking out for this community? So
Well,
that's my follow-up here.
Sure, Shoshana, and you should have some faith in the DEC to be that watchdog, because that is our role and that's what we do. We're grounded in law and regulation and science. The laws that we oversee this facility with have penalty stipulations that are outlined, and there's maximum daily penalties that are associated with that, and things that we can only go so far as regulators to enforce against. But that's what we use, and those are all part of the tools that we use in trying to make sure that this landfill is behaving properly and operating in accordance with those rules and regulations that we have overseeing it. And I think you can see from the track record that is on our website and our actions that we have ratcheted down on this facility, and we're going to continue to do that because we have to be responsible regulators on your behalf, and that's what we do. And you should take some solace in the fact that when you look at these actions that we have undertaken, it is a direct result of the complaints that we've been getting, and it's the actions that we needed to see happen to correct those issues that the community was facing.
I'll say one more thing, and then I'll pass it on to the next question. But I think that this community of North Bellport, which is predominantly Black and Brown and Indigenous, has been failed by government so many times on so many levels, on so many issues. And I think it is part of an overall pattern. And I think that is something that needs to be addressed. And I think that there needs to be real remediation. And I get to sit 15 miles away from that landfill and, not smell it, but I certainly know in the times that I've visited it, there is an injustice happening in this area. And I think it is high time that it be corrected and there be real remediation. And with that, I will pass it to our next question.
Sure. And so, Sean, I would just say, again, take a look at our most recent newsletter that we put out, because, again, that goes through all the corrective actions that we're requiring in this facility based on that. And we are trying to make sure and doing the best that we can to ensure this facility is coming into compliance with that and addressing those root problems. And again, if those problems are persisting, as Aphrodite said, and as I said before, please file complaints with the department. That is the ammunition that we need in order to pursue this facility and make further corrective actions take place.
Monique, you're up.
Good evening. My name is Monique. I'm here with Hannah. She went first. We both live in North Bellport. I lived here my whole life. We are both Black and Indigenous, and a lot of our family lives here in this North Bellport area. So we feel these effects most harsh and most directly. So I'm gonna try to get to the point because I'm a little frustrated, so I'm gonna try not to throw that frustration out too hard. But I heard Rosa Mendez, I believe her name is, say several times that she and the DEC works with the community. And like I said, I've been here for my entire life, which is 42 years, and I've never, ever heard from the DEC. Not one time have I heard from the DEC. Also, you said that you work with the Indigenous nations. Like I said, we are part of the Settecott Nation. Never have I heard from the DEC in our nation. We also have Tila here from Shinnecock. She can speak about her relations with the DEC, but I know we have not, as a nation, have any communication with the DEC. And I just want to point out that with the Settecott Nation, we are here in the town of Brookhaven where the landfill sits, and this is the town that stole our land. So again, we have not heard from the DEC. I wouldn't even know that a DEC existed had I not done my own research, had I not tried to do as much as I could to protect the people here and myself included on this issue and many other issues. So I'm just trying to figure out what the DEC is talking about, or what you're talking about when you say you are reaching out to indigenous nations, and you're reaching out to communities, because it's not happening. And you know, there's no other way to go around it, because you can't, tell me that you've reached out when I know you haven't. So that's part of that's, I guess, my preface to what I have to say, and my question, really. So basically, the DEC has these policies in place, like you had already mentioned, Ms. Rosa Mendez, about working with our communities, but we haven't seen any evidence of that. So like Shoshana said, we are a potential justice area. So all of these things are pointing to, why hasn't the DEC contacted us? I believe, Sean, you were saying that we need to contact you. Aphrodite, you said that we need to call the hotline, and we do by and large do that. But at the same time, when is it not our job to do your job? So I'll leave it right there, and then I'll let you respond.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I mean, don't mistake what I'm saying as suggesting that we need you to do our jobs in some way. It's more that when I say we need ammunition, that if there are fundamental complaints that the community is facing on the front line of it, we need those complaints to come to us. Just because you're experiencing something and you may talk to other folks about it and complain about it, if we're not hearing directly from you, we can't take the actions that you want to see. And that's why we just want to create that dynamic where you know exactly where to go to, so that you can lodge those complaints, and then we can use to take the actions that we need, because on the front line, that's what we need as a first approach. And I would just say that if you found it hard to access the department in the past, we're here tonight, and this is why I think we recognized, as soon as Kareem and others had approached us about wanting to do this event, this is why I personally wanted to come at with the highest level of this agency and show that we are here for you and we're hearing you, and that there are ways and avenues of being connected to the department. And we want to make sure that you're finding those opportunities and being able to engage and associate with us. And I know Rosa can go in a little more in depth about our EJ program and that engagement that we do with indigenous nations and community groups. But we don't want you feeling frustrated. There are ways you can contact the department. Aphrodite and Bill Fonda are two of those conduits into the department on the local level. And Rosa and her office have other conduits as well. And if you're not hearing from us, please let us know, because again, we want to be in conversation with you, because we are your government and we are here for you, and we are working on your behalf day in and day out. That's just what we do, and we're always trying to take those opportunities.
I understand that. I just want to jump in real quick, because complaining and being able to talk to people, those things are not things that we really are able to do in all practicality. But aside from that, we also need something to be done. Taking note, documentation, blah, 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 stuff that we don't have access to unless we FOIL for that information, doesn't help the community. And it doesn't help the community if we're only having documentation, because we can document till our eyes are blue. We need some action done. And right now we're not seeing any action. So, I mean, if Aphrodite or Rosa has something that they can say that speaks directly to some action being done, I would love to hear it.
Sure, I'll let Rosa step in a little bit more, again, based on our engagement. But the actions that we've undertaken, again, are very outlined in the most recent fact sheet that we put out. And I would have you start there so you can see exactly how we've enforced against this facility, what we've required them to do, and where we're moving forward. If that's not enough from your perspective, let us know which parts of that you think are not enough, and we're going to continue to evolve and adapt our oversight on your behalf, because that's our goal overall. But Rosa, do you want to speak at all to our additional engagement points?
I did. I wanted to talk a bit about our engagement with the Shinnecock Nation, because we do engage with, as I said earlier, with Indian nations on a government-to-government basis. So we have been, and that includes, on issues related to shellfish, on issues related to water quality in Hetty Creek, but it also involves, we have an annual meeting every year. This year, last year's was a little bit delayed, and we're trying to have that arranged for this year. But we engage with leadership, and we try to get that through our commissioner, because we want to have that, again, government face-to-face relationship with our commissioner and the leadership from the nations. But a lot of our engagement comes through our environmental offices. So I know that the environmental office of the Shinnecock Nation is in contact with my Indian Nations Affairs coordinator, and as well with our environmental quality programs, where we try to work, again, collaboratively with them, but we also try to respond to issues that they bring to our attention as well.
So with that, I understand, like I said, Taylor is here, and whenever she's ready to speak or wants to speak, I would, would love for you to jump in. But we are talking about the landfill in Brookhaven. So we're talking about the Black people here and the Indigenous people here. So when have you reached out to the Shinnecock Nation at all regarding the landfill? And I just want to point out, before you answer that question, that it's my understanding that you're the chair of the Climate Justice Working Group under the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which is responsible for determining the criteria for disadvantaged communities, which will dictate communities' investment under the 35% mandate in the law, as designated by the potential environmental justice area by New York State DEC's own map, as previously noted by Shoshana. Can you guarantee that North Belport community will be a beneficiary of this investment mandate under the criteria you're developing, relatedly to North Belport and the surrounding areas, including, like we said, the Indigenous populations that live here in this neighborhood and also surrounding neighborhoods? And how is the Climate Justice Working Group incorporating the specific injustices faced by Indigenous people in its criteria for disadvantaged communities? And what is New York State doing on a larger level to ensure that they are engaging nation to nation? So I know you kind of started that conversation, but please be more specific when you answer the question, if you can be.
Sure, and I'll talk about the Climate Justice Working Group first. And as you said, they are working to establish criteria to identify disadvantaged communities pursuant to the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. Now, that working group, it is made up of environmental justice representatives from communities across the state. So specifically, the statute requires 3 representatives from New York City, 3 from upstate urban areas, and 3 from parts of the state that are more rural. And that group of individuals, they've been meeting since, I believe, August. I know we announced it in June, but our first meeting was in August. And they are moving along a process to establish those criteria. So I can't tell you today what that working group is going to come up with, because we also want to hear from New Yorkers. So that working group at our very last meeting talked about how are they going to engage with all of New York, with the communities that are likely going to be included in the criteria or the definition that results from that criteria. So that is something that they are continuing to put together. And I know I could comment on the structure that the Climate Leadership Act provided to guide the work of that working group in terms of the definition. And it did include the very things that you're talking about. One of the, what we're referring to as pillars, one of the pillars the Climate Act gave us was to look at pollution burdens. So that's one of the things driving this definition. The second pillar was around socioeconomic information, and that includes income, that includes race and ethnicity. And then the third pillar is vulnerability to the impacts of climate change. So those are the 3 things that are going to be guiding the criteria that this working group uses to identify where disadvantaged communities are in New York for all of the things you mentioned, including the benefits of investments from the state in the areas of clean energy and energy efficiency.
All right, well, I'm just gonna say one more thing and I'll let the next person go. The one thing is just more of a comment is about these committees and this documentation. Everything that I'm hearing is more paperwork, more and more geared towards to just talking about what to do. It's 2021. We all know what environmental justice is. We all know when we see it, we all know that it's happening. We don't need to have 1,000 committees and 1,000 meetings just to determine how or what we're dealing with or who is involved. We already know the players. We already know who's here. We live here in North Bellport. We've been here. We've been Black. We've been Indigenous and Latino for decades. So it's time to stop meeting. It's time to act. So I'll leave it at that.
Nope, and we hear you loud and clear on that. And again, you know, the materials that we've put out on our website and that fact sheet details the actions that we're undertaking. We're continuing to take more of those as well. We're committed to you and we want an open dialogue with you as we continue to ratchet down on this facility and take those actions, plan appropriately for its closure, and then work with you all moving forward on waste reduction overall on Long Island. And I'm, you know, glad to hear that you are focused on that through your opening remarks, you know, looking at zero waste initiatives, really looking at our own personal stewardship that we have to undertake as a society and as individuals to reduce our wastes overall and find those strategies. And we have some of the best creative minds in the country that are working on that on behalf of the department. You know, we're happy to continue to have more of these dialogues moving forward so you can hear from some of those experts. But I want you to know that we do hear you. The actions that we've undertaken are very open and transparent, and that's what we've done on your behalf. And that's what we're going to continue to do. And I hope that as you hear us talk tonight and we have this conversation, you do get a good sense that we are committed to you, because we are. And fundamentally, the actions that we're undertaking are on your behalf and are to address the problems that you're seeing in your community. So thank you for those comments, and have any more questions.
So I want to mention that you're saying these are the actions we have taken on your behalf. Yet here you have Monique, a Black woman from North Bellport, telling you that they are not being heard. So how can you take actions on their behalf if you are not hearing them? You know,
Well,
sometimes it's not our job to, you know, to tell people what they feel or what is right and what is wrong, or read a million books or get all these experts. Sometimes we just have to open our ears and listen to the people being directly affected. And they're calling for the DEC to help them. They're saying our town is not here for us. We need you to help us. Give us our justice. The environmental injustice we're facing is not fair. But they're not being heard. And it still seems as though you guys still aren't hearing them.
Well,
We have a local regional individual who, up until today, I'm sure nobody knew the name. And that's sad. Because again, how can this be a community that is in a high impact environmental injustice zone, yet they're not even being reached out to?
Sure, and like I said, we're always trying to take steps to improve our communication and outreach overall. I mean, fundamentally, that is one of our goals. We are your government and we are here on behalf of you, and we want to find those right ways of approaching you. And part of the reason that we wanted to come on tonight was to listen to you and make sure that we're appropriately hearing the problems that you're seeing, and that you know that we take those comments very seriously, and then take that back to our broader teams and make sure that we're overseeing this facility and others like it on your behalf effectively, because that really is our goal. And that's why we're here tonight, to listen to this.
So on that note, I'm gonna take us over to Karim, the one who has been reaching out to you guys for months and trying to get you guys here tonight. So thank you, Karim, for bringing in the DEC. You're up next.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, hi, my name's Karim Otakon. I'm a primary care doc. I live not so far from the landfill. I wanted to take a second actually before we go to actually just let people know and thank Assemblyman Engelbright and County Legislator Clarko for joining us on this call. You know, we've had a lot of difficulty reaching our local government. In fact, it's like there's a moratorium on having any discussions with us. So that's actually a very frustrating process as a citizen, to be totally shut out from the political process. But this is the definition of disenfranchisement. And this is something that unfortunately, the folks who have been dealing with this landfill, they've been disenfranchised from the political process for decades. So it's nice to see that this is starting to move in a different direction. And I think, you know, my question gets to the 300-foot elephant in the room, which is the actual siting of the Brookhaven landfill, which in and of itself is an environmental justice issue. So I don't think, in respect to Shoshana's question earlier, I didn't really feel like there was a clear answer from the DEC, whether they thought that there is an environmental justice issue surrounding this landfill. But let's be clear, the siting of this landfill in adjacent to North Bellport is an environmental justice issue. So given that, you know, and this should be an easy question because I've actually emailed it for months to DEC. You know, it's a question about the permit renewal process. The landfill's permit expired in November. And, you know, when we first reached out to DEC and said, look, the permit expired, you know, is there any opportunity for the public to have a discussion about environmental justice as it relates to the permit renewal process? We were told no. This was in the fall. Then we started doing some digging, and, you know, every time we send a question about this, we're told, you know, the 2003 Commissioner's Policy 29 doesn't apply to permit renewals. And we get that. Commissioner's Policy 29 is explicit about, you know, new permits and incorporating environmental justice process in new permits. But then we started digging, and it's pretty clear in the rules and regulations of New York, which dictate DEC's functioning, that permit renewal requires, quote, a demonstration that the facility is consistent with the goals and objectives of the New York State Solid Waste Management Plan. And to our friends who are concerned about incineration, it also talks about, which includes myself, an emphasis on diversion from thermal treatment and disposal. So then when we look at the December 2010 New York State Solid Waste Management Plan goals and objectives, it clearly states that one of the primary goals of the plan is to, quote, strive for full public participation, fairness, and environmental justice. So here we have this quandary where, you know, we're told that there's no opportunity for public participation, no opportunity to address fairness, and no opportunity to address environmental justice in the landfill's permit renewal process. And it's pretty clear that, you know, even in the existing Cell 6 permit renewal, there was never really an analysis done to look at environmental justice issues when that cell was built. But it's pretty clear that I would say that this facility is not consistent with the goals and objectives of the New York State Solid Waste Management Plan with respect to both striving for full public participation, fairness, environmental justice, and an emphasis on diversion from thermal treatment and disposal. So it's there's a disconnect. And to be honest, I emailed Ms. Director Mendez in December about this, but I've also been having this conversation with DEC months in advance of that. So it would be nice to kind of have an answer.
Sure, Kerman. You know, I'll start walking you through this, and you know, we can continue this. I think, you know, fundamentally to your comments on siting overall, you know, I myself and us on the phone can't really speak to the siting process that the town undertook way back in the 70s or earlier when they developed this. I can't truly speak to what the permitting was at the time or the viewpoints on it. What I can say is that our commitment moving forward is obviously to work with you in a very open and transparent way should we get any permit renewals, applications, or other actions by the town regarding this landfill. And we are continuing to change our programs and adapt our programs. And yes, we are grounded in statute and law and regulation, but we're always taking steps to improve that oversight overall. And with regard to permitting, yes.
You muted yourself.
Sorry about that. Don't know what you missed then, but basically what I was
You
trying
said
to say.
with regard to permitting.
Oh yeah, so with regard to permitting, there are specific processes that are afforded through the State Administrative Procedures Act that are afforded to facilities like a landfill or others that we have to abide by. But we're always taking opportunities to do better and figure out how we need to change and adapt our programs to make sure that communities have a voice and say in the permit renewal process. And as we get applications for that, we make sure that we're doing that engagement. And I'll make a commitment to you all tonight that as that moves forward and that advances, that we want to hear your voice and we want to work with you on that, because again, we are your government, we are acting on your behalf, and we want to do that in a very open way with you so that we are operating on your behalf when we oversee this facility and as we treat our permits. And while there may not be specific provisions in our programs now currently, we're always evaluating that and adapting that to make sure we're bringing the best to bear on this facility overall. Rosa, I don't know if you wanted to speak any more to that or address any of those other comments that Karim had made. Rosa, you there?
You're on your own, Sean.
Okay. No, that's fine. But Karim, I hope that helps provide a little bit of perspective about how we approach it. And again, we are an agency that is grounded in the laws of the state and the regulations that we've developed. And there are specific protocols that we have to follow as a regulating agency to adequately and effectively oversee a facility like this. And there are specific provisions in the permitting process. Look, I understand that this is bureaucracy at its best. We are a bureaucratic agency. It stinks sometimes. Trust me. It's difficult for me to be able to have to step into a situation like this and say, I do not have a magic wand and we can't do anything specifically because we have to follow the laws and regulations of the state. But that is the construct of our government agency and the way your government has been developed to oversee a facility like this. And this is what we do. Again, we are always trying to make steps to improve that. We're here tonight to, again, listen to you and figure out how else we have to take steps to improve that. And I hope that you take away a few things tonight. And one of them being is that we are open to this dialogue and we're committed to working with you moving forward in the future.
I appreciate the dialogue, and this is new for us, so I almost don't know what to do with it. But I do want to clarify. So, we're talking about permit renewals being governed under rules and regulations from New York State. Do you agree? Am I reading this correctly? Under New York State rules and regulations, permit renewals require demonstration that the facility is consistent with the goals and objectives in New York State Solid Waste Management Plan, right? We're reading the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that plan says that goals and objectives are clear that one of the primary goals is to, quote, strive for full public participation, fairness, and environmental justice. So we agree on that too, right? That's in the, okay. So I guess how does that translate? So now we have a permit that expired in November. That, it's my understanding that 6 months prior to the expiration, the town of Brookhaven submitted their permit renewal application. So now we're 10 months after that permit renewal application was submitted. How have, where's the public participation? Where's the fairness? Where's the environmental justice?
Well, again, part of it is the process. And once a facility submits an application to us, we have to determine whether or not it's complete. But while we're undertaking that review to determine whether or not it's complete, there are provisions under the State Administrative Procedures Act that allows a permit to be extended while that review takes place if it was adequately submitted in time. And that's something that we have to evaluate to see if they met the criteria of submitting a timely renewal that was sufficient from our standpoint. And then we determine whether or not that application is complete. So we're in the process of reviewing that. I believe there have been a few notices of incomplete application in which the town has had to provide us with additional information before we determine it's complete. And once it is determined to be a complete application, that's when we would put it out for public comment and do a community engagement and really hear from you about your thoughts with regard to the permit that we take into consideration. So that's part of the process that we are grounded in, that we have to undertake and go through. And that's very much what we're in the middle of now. But the way the State Administrative Procedures Act has been created, there are specific provisions that are allocated to a current facility in the process that we have to abide by.
Thank you. And I was told that it was submitted in a complete and timely manner already. So that's interesting that it's incomplete. What is the penalty? So, you know, just like our local solid waste management plan, which is incomplete and has been incomplete since DC's comments in 2018, and here we are in 2021, 1 year from the end of that 10-year plan. Is there a penalty for them not completing this? Because, you know, the landfill is going to fill up in 3 years. I can see our town in their ingenuity just not completing the process so that we avoid this, again, the 300-foot elephant in the room, that the siting of this landfill and every expansion and every cell that's been expanded since then has been an environmental justice issue. And, you know, this is, again, a landfill. I look at this as a whole landfill, not just cell 6, cell 7, or whatever. You know, this is a landfill that is leaking into our groundwater and nobody is doing anything about it. I'm going to leave it at that.
Sure, and Karim, I have to look at the specific statutes with regard to penalties. I can't speak on that in particular, but there is a lot of information on our website about the permitting process overall, specific to landfills, but generally about any facilities that we oversee. You know, I'll work with Aphrodite to provide you some follow-up information just on that with regard to the process and any penalties that are associated with it. And, you know, this landfill is routinely monitored. There are monitoring wells around it. It is, you know, governed by our Part 360 regulations with regard to leachate collection and lining requirements and other things. So I don't have any evidence of there being any groundwater contamination from this because of the way it was constructed. And that's something that we pay very close attention to and oversee overall.
So you know, I'm happy, I'll drop the link into the chat, but it's very clear in the D&B reports that I received by FOIL from DEC months and months after that there is there's a active plume, and this is well known for decades. This is the community around this was taken off their public water, but we have a sole source aquifer, okay? So there is an active plume, and DEC is not testing. When I ask DEC, they say that they're not testing for emerging contaminants like PFAS in the active plume, while DOH, New York State Department of Health, is doing an EPA-funded study on PFAS contamination in our groundwater. Every single ratepayer in Long Island is paying an $80 a year surcharge, $20 quarterly year surcharge to clean up at the tune of $200 million a year PFAS from our groundwater. Landfills are known to leachate of landfills is known to contain PFAS. And when I look at the D&B reports, I read the most recent ones, 200 pages plus. You know, there's discussion of 1,4-dioxane with respect to leachate, which is in the leachate. And again, we have a known plume, but there is no discussion of PFAS, which is, again, we're paying out of our teeth to clean this out of the groundwater. And so when I call Suffolk County Water, you know, I ask DEC, I don't get a clear response. I call Suffolk County Water Authority. They say, talk to the Department of Health. I call the Department of Health and they say, oh yeah, we tested PFAS and we actually found elevated PFAS in private wells surrounding the plume. And I said, okay, what did you do with that information? They told me they sent it back to DEC. So here we are. I'm asking for 6 months plus. Do we have this information? And again, it's like the most Kafkaesque experience. And I used to work for the city of New York. I'm very familiar with bureaucracy. But then it leads back to the regulator, which is you guys. And it's really alarming, the kind of, you know, it's almost like it takes over my evenings and weekends, just trying to find basic information. All of this stuff should be online.
Sure, and Karim, I just want to unpack that a little bit more with the team and get back to you on that specifically, because we, as a state that's on the forefront of the PFAS issue overall, we've taken a lot of steps to build in monitoring requirements on our Superfund sites, brownfield sites, inactive landfill sites, and active landfill sites with regard to sampling for PFAS, so that we can have a true handle on where and how this may be entering the environment and what additional steps that we have to take. So I need to just make sure that where the Brookhaven monitoring requirements are with the team, just to make sure that that's been built in, or when the sampling results are going to be built in. I would point you to DEC's info locator. If you haven't checked that out on our website, this is a great repository for information for facilities like the Brookhaven landfill. I know Aphrodite has shared our fact sheets and our website specific to Brookhaven, but with regard to sampling results and permitting information and other information on how DEC and all the different programs that oversee a landfill, the info locator is a great tool that you can use to get a lot of that information that's routinely updated as well. But Karim, I do want to unpack that a little bit more with the team and get back to you, because it is a very involved answer with regard to how we're surveying for emerging contaminants and groundwater issues in the area. I want to unpack the data a little bit more with them as well, just to see, with what's out there currently and what actions that we've undertaken to address any of the issues that are found on the site. But, again, rest assured that we're hearing you on this, and I want to make sure that our team is doing everything that it should be doing to oversee this facility. And I'm hearing you loud and clear on that, so we'll take that back.
All right, Karim, if you give the thumbs up, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on over to Miss Hannah.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Karim, thank you very much. My line of questioning is really directed to what Karim was discussing, but I'm not a scientist, and my questions are more in layman's terms, but it is a fact from the foiling that Karim did that there are some leakage in the cells, especially the ones who were filled in, began being filled in 1974 and were later on capped in 1996. And I do know that the capping process is not a definite way of preventing leakage. We do know that. Scientifically, we know that. So what I want to know is, what remediation do you do on those old caps? I'm an old timer. I was against the landfill being placed there before it was even built there, because I am aware of landfills and what it does to the environment. So what I want to know, what are you doing? Because I do consider this an environmental justice issue. So what are you doing as a DEC to correct it and monitor it, since there is, according to Unified Environmental Monitoring Program report that I believe is done by, let me see, okay, that report was foiled by Karim, am I correct? So what are you doing to repair, which there is no way, I understand, to even repair a capping that old, am I correct? And I have another part of this question.
Sure, and to answer that too, I'm scanning through some of our background information that's on our website and elsewise.
Okay, these were cells 1, 2, and 3 that were filled starting 1974 and capped in 1996, and they continue to be monitored as having leakage.
Yep.
And I don't think they were capped exactly like maybe 4 and 5 in the same protocol. But what can you do to remediate that, to improve that? And is that an environmental justice issue to you? And what, as a community, we have the blunt of that. So what can we do?
Sure. So what I do want to do is I'll have Aphrodite take down this question and we'll work with the team to unpack it so we can give you a full answer of exactly what we're doing with regard to any leakage from the site into groundwater that's causing a contamination issue in a plume. Because I
Okay.
want to talk to
All
our
right, then in the
landfill experts.
meantime, this is an environmental justice issue.
For
This is
sure.
our community. This is our community. Even though you're going to answer the question through the DEC, this is still my environment. This is still my community.
Correct. And one of the things
Right.
we always do, and I know from speaking on behalf of the department and knowing the expert approach that they provide, you know, one of the first things we look at are the exposure pathways. How can someone become exposed to potential contaminants in the environment? So with regard to groundwater, and if there is groundwater contamination emanating from a site, one of the first exposure pathways we look for is drinking water. And we look for private wells around a site to make sure that no one is potentially drinking contaminated water that would then expose them to any contaminants of concern. I know, I'm pretty sure the majority, if not all, of the surrounding homes that are nearby this facility are on public water. So there are no wells that are drawing directly from any potential groundwater contaminants that are found on the site. And that's not contributing to an exposure pathway. But again, I want to unpack this a little bit more with the team myself to make sure that we've got a full handle on any potential plumes of contaminants that are out there and provide you a more fuller response just on how we're approaching it from the expert standpoint that we have to make sure that, again, you're not being exposed and we're taking steps to address anything that may be found in the environment.
Okay, this is a run-on question. A run-on question, I'm sorry. Okay, so back in 2017, we had an independent contractor come out to measure our air quality and water quality. And he said that, I wish I had took better notes, that there was some toxins in the water, but not to affect human life. Now, every person has a different capacity of what will affect them health-wise. So what determines that? What determines that? If an independent contractor can come and measure water quality, how many times are you measuring this effect of the leakage at the landfill? Once a year?
Well, that's what I want to unpack with the team a little bit who oversees this to get a full understanding of exactly all the different monitoring requirements that are on this facility and the times in which that monitoring takes place. Because
well, I really feel that's a disgrace, because the only fall that we have under wrap is from Mr. Kareem, and it's only from 2020, one time each year. So I think that is really disheartening for someone that is from the DEC or EPA or any place else not to monitor the effect of a landfill that they capped, that they cannot uncap to do correctly. That's a fact. And also, it is mentioned to the community through various reading materials that it takes almost 30 years to completely close a landfill. So who has been on this mission of when these caps were closed in 1996 to monitor them?
Well, that's
It's not only water, but air.
Yeah, I mean, that is the responsibility of the department, and it's one that we take seriously. And we do have expert folks that are working on that. And again,
where are they? And where are the reports, sir?
Well, that's why I want to dive in with the team to make sure that everything is available. We can point you to the right direction on that. I have a full understanding of exactly the detailed questions that you're asking for with regard to the monitoring requirements of this facility for groundwater and other aspects of their operations, so that we can give you a full report on that. I mean, that's why I wanted to take this back. And
I'm going to try to follow this as best I can for the report. And I have another question to you.
Sure.
I'd like to know what is the estimated post-closure costs for this whole Brookhaven landfill and these cells to be closed? Does anybody have a oversight on how much it might cost us? Is it going to be any cost to the community in our taxes?
That again, I would have to take back to the team because I'm not familiar with any cost estimates that have been done with regard to this facility's closure plan. So that's another one that I'll have Aphrodite take down, and we'll work on producing an FAQ sheet that we can get back to you that addresses some of these questions before.
And how do we obtain that? Do we have to get someone on our group to boil it, and that will take 6 months or maybe a year after we've been in this for almost 5 decades?
No.
I didn't find the landfill before it was open, before 1974.
Yeah, no, I think with regard to the questions that you're asking tonight that we can't answer directly, we're going to take those back. We'll produce a frequently asked questions list that addresses this.
And who is going to respond back to me?
Sure. Well, look, I'll work
to
with
us.
Karim, who set up,
Fine, that's
got us
fine.
involved here, but we'll make sure we're communicating with your group and getting you that information.
Okay, I'm going to be expecting that as a citizen and a community member of Bellport that's been affected by that.
Sure.
My last question to you is, I think that you might have answered it. How can we be more involved in the input and oversight in this closure process? Are we going to know when you're going to close 5 and 6, even though you say cell 5 is closed, but it's connected to cell 6? So who gives us clarity on your progress on what you're closing and the estimated time of the actual closure, even though you say 2024, because my faith in the town of Brookhaven is nay.
Sure. So what we could put together, and again, I want to unpack it from the team from the regulatory standpoint of the closure process that this facility is going to have to follow. So we'll put that together in one of the FAQs that we develop so you can see, and we'll make sure that we highlight the steps in the process in which community engagement is involved in that as well. A lot of that is going to be on the town as the operator of the facility. There are specific requirements that they are going to have to do to comply with our oversight, but we'll put that out in a way that is very clear for you, and we can have future conversations on that.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to be looking for that information.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
We're gonna go ahead and allow Jennifer G now to ask her question.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. Is my sound good?
Yep.
Great. So I am also a member of BLARG. I'm a resident of Bellport, and my question follows up on something Karim referred to, namely the lack of an approved local solid waste management plan. In 2018, the DEC gave important comments to Brookhaven's 2012 to 2022 local solid waste management plan. And here we are 1 year from the end of that plan, and we still do not have any Brookhaven town response to DEC's comments. We still do not have a DEC approved local solid waste management plan. What we do have locally are major solid waste infrastructure projects being proposed, specifically a proposed 230-acre waste transfer station, another pending waste transfer station in Medford, and until yesterday, a new Asheville was being considered. So as you said, Sean, DEC is our regulatory agency.
Mm-hmm.
Why has DEC allowed any of these waste infrastructure projects to proceed without an approved local solid waste management plan?
No, very good question. And again, I need to just dive in specifically on some of that with our team, just because I want to understand if the town had gotten back to us in any way, or how that was being undertaken, because again, I want to make sure that everything is going by the books. The other applications that we get for various components or facilities have to go through different permitting processes. And again, because we're a bureaucracy and grounded in those regulatory processes, we do have to take the individual applications one-on-one and move them through that process, while still, as being responsible regulators, look at the overarching picture of what we're seeing in the community. And those are active conversations and active dialogue that's taking place now, and something that obviously is near and dear to our hearts to make sure that we get right. And as those applications for those other facilities go through the process and there are opportunities for public comment, we very much value and look forward to getting those comments to make sure that we're acting right on your behalf. Because again, that I hate to keep reiterating myself, but that is our goal, to make sure that we're hearing you loud and clear, and then explaining our processes and the science or the logic behind our actions that we take in a way that makes sense to you. So again, this is the start of a dialogue that we want to keep going with you. And it is you know, something that we're taking very seriously as we look at overall solid waste management on Long Island in general, and undertake the specific reviews on these specific proposals that are underway currently.
Okay, but I'm hoping that I can understand in general what you're telling me about what happens when towns do not respond to your feedback. What strategies does DEC employ in that situation?
Yep. And that's again why I want to just unpack that a little bit more with our team, to make sure that I'm representing them properly in the way
No,
that.
but I'm just saying, let's suppose it's the case that Brookhaven Town has not responded to your feedback. What strategies would DEC employ in that situation?
Well, and again, that's why I want to unpack it with the team to make sure I don't misspeak in what those strategies are. But, you know, what we do when we look at enforcement of the specific regulations that adhere to the solid waste management planning process overall, I want to make sure I unpack that in the right way to show exactly what we do.
You just can't say what DEC does when a town.
Well, I don't have the specific statute in front of me or the specific regulation in front of me to walk you through step by step, or to say what the penalties are if something doesn't comply, or what we do if they're not in compliance with that specific component with regard to the permitting actions that we undertake or the corrective actions that we undertake. So that's why I just want to take that back and not misspeak, to make sure I'm giving you that adequate perspective on what we do, because it is something that we do take actions on. Again, not having it right in front of me, I don't want to say the wrong thing, and I want to make sure that I'm representing our team properly.
I'm done, Michelle.
So, and I know Aphrodite's taken a lot of notes, and these are things that we'll definitely look to get back to you on.
All right, well, Mr. Mahar, you better tell the DEC to get you some new suitcases or something for all this unpacking you're saying you're gonna be doing. So Aphrodite, then we'll know. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on to Annelise's question.
Okay, my name is Annalise Cameron. I'm a professor of political science, and I live in South Haven, which is a neighborhood directly east of the landfill, about 4 miles. And my question is about the fact that this is a regional landfill. We receive ash in the town of Brookhaven from other towns all over Long Island. We've become the garbage capital of Long Island, and without anyone asking us if that was what we wanted. The New York State DEC Region 1 tells BLARG that the Long Island Regional Planning Council is the venue for regional solid waste management planning. Yet LIRPC Deputy Director Cole wrote to us in February, the COVID-19 pandemic and health crisis has paused work on Long Island's solid waste issues by the Long Island Regional Planning Council. The crisis has placed additional financial and operational burdens and challenges on all levels of government and the private sector. Therefore, we are not able to respond to your inquiry at this time. Yet, again, here we are with 4 major waste infrastructure projects going through the approval process, and none of these are in Long Island's wealthier zip codes. The vacuum of regional planning creates an environmental justice issue. I want to know, is the DEC taking on any regional planning role at all, or are you leaving communities to fend for themselves against the onslaught of waste infrastructure projects that are being advanced during this pandemic?
No, I think overall, and thank you for that question and viewpoint overall, I think the Planning Council step was a way of us working regionally to get that focus and conversation going and underway. Those conversations are continuing. especially as we look at improving solid waste management across the island overall. And there is a lot more work that we have to undertake with all the communities around the island to plan for this. And again, fundamentally work with organizations like yours to work at reducing waste overall and getting the behavior changes that we need to see in individuals to reduce our wastes underway. And I think one of the things that you can really help us on is continuing to send out a lot of the information on recycling right that we have. Working with your legislators, obviously, on pushing for waste reduction measures is another important strategy. And we're listening loud and clear and working at developing some of those other actions that we need to take, statewide to improve our waste management, because it's not just Long Island that we're facing a solid waste management issues and needing to make improvements. I think you look across the state, there are many other communities that are facing a lot of similar issues, especially in the pandemic. And when you look at the recycling market impacts that China's actions have undertaken in the last few years, it's really hit the nail on the head and brought everything to the forefront that we as society really need to be doing a better job at waste management. And we, thankfully do have a lot of expertise within the state here that are working to try and advance those solutions. And there is more work that we have to do, and we are committed to that. And again, I think the more that we talk and work together at making those behavior changes happen, that is important. But when it comes regionally to Long Island, what we wanted to do was, through the Planning Council, was really create the right forum to get those conversations started and get all the communities really working together at advancing some of those solutions overall. So, that's just some of the approach that we've undertaken. And Aphrodite, I don't know if you want to mention anything more about the Planning Council efforts overall, but we can make sure that there's some additional information that we provide as follow-up to this that goes into more of that.
The Planning Council will tell us that, oh, this is a town issue. We've been in contact with the Planning Council. I don't see anybody stepping up, and this is a problem that is completely foreseeable, including China's not wanting to take anyone's waste anymore. Anybody could see that coming down the road. Why is the DEC not the lead agency on this?
Well, we are the lead agency overall in the statewide efforts. When it comes to the regional efforts, there are specific actions that municipalities do have to undertake with regard to waste management. That is basically the laws and the way that they were written. What we can do is be the facilitator of some of those conversations and overseer of those conversations.
And when those conversations fail to happen, where's the DEC?
Well, right now, that's exactly what we're doing, is figuring out the next steps that we have to undertake to make sure that those conversations are happening in the way that we need to see it, and all those communities are working together on those solutions.
Annalise, did you want to circle back, or are you okay?
No, it's clear I'm not going to get an answer.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Bob B.
Yes, my question is along a similar line, really, and that is it seems clear that there has to be a much greater emphasis, or there has to be some emphasis. There is no emphasis right now on a regional solution for managing solid waste here. And it's certainly true in town of Brookhaven, probably all on Long Island, and for all I know, in all of New York State. I don't know. But there has to be somebody or some agency who is going to take the reins for this. How did Krim call it? The 300 pound elephant, or the 300 foot elephant that we're trying to manage, a 300-foot high elephant that nobody is in control of. And it needs direction, and it seems apparent to me and maybe others that a larger umbrella agency needs to really take an active role in this, and I would certainly just encourage the DEC to take a more active role than we've seen so far. So that's my entreaty to you.
No, Bob, loud and clear. And look, I'll be honest with you and say that from our commissioner on down, we recognize the issues that are facing Long Island from a solid waste management perspective. And he is really galvanizing and leading those internal conversations. And then that's leading to a lot of external conversations with the Planning Council and others. It is something that we see and we recognize and know needs to occur. And we're formulating those actions and taking those steps as we speak, really, because it is something that's on the horizon and we recognize and that we all need to be working together to address.
And so finally, and just before I move on or the next person takes over, what I'm encouraged by what this dialogue that we're having this evening, me personally, that I'm only speaking for myself, but we need names and telephone numbers and people, and we need technical people to be able to contact too, not and with all due respect, I'm no demeaning to a public participation specialist, but I used to work with this agency. It would be very useful if we could have some interaction with some of the technical people
Sure.
in the regional office as well. So we would encourage that and maybe set up some sort of regular meetings with, if not you, sir, then somebody at least at the regional level, and how we can begin to, we've started a dialogue here. And this is something that must be continued. And so however you want to, offer that, it's critical to really ameliorating the real concerns of the Bellport residents, but all of us on Long Island. So thank you for being here today.
Again, hear that loud and clear. Aphrodite and Bill Fonda can be two of your first contacts into that. I think what we can look to do is provide additional contact information for some of the other teams on some of the forward-facing things that we have of the fact sheets, so that you can know the different staff experts that we have that are working to oversee the various components of this landfill. And, working through Bill and Aphrodite, look to create other forums that provide that opportunity for, more of our technical experts to engage on some of this, because it is neat to be able to speak to them and hear them and hear the ways in which that they approach a facility like this, because they are very smart and technical folks that really understand the science behind a facility like this and are passionate about the way in which we've built our programs to oversee it. So we can look for definitely more opportunities like that in the future to have more dialogues. And again, tonight, that's why we wanted to at least start it with you and, picking up on the tension that exists here. And that's why, again, I wanted you to hear from the top as the chief of staff from this agency to let you know that we are taking these issues seriously and that we are committed to improving the dialogue moving forward. So this is really helpful for me to hear and to hear this feedback so that I can take it back to the teams and work to improve it moving forward.
So thank you very much, and I'll pass on to the next question.
Okay, then thanks, Bob. The next person is Katie J.
Hi, yes, thank you very much. I'm going to keep this short because I know that there are a lot of people here on the call who want to ask questions too. Just briefly, when we inquire with the DEC about the emerging contaminants and the known plume, we're told that the New York State DEC does not test private wells, but they're doing just that in surrounding closed landfill contamination in Saugerties, New York. So my question is just what's different about our landfill?
Again, that's why I think pivoting back to one of the answers I gave before, that I want to just unpack that with the team a little bit with regard to where in the process the perfluorinated compound analysis that we're requiring at these facilities is. And again, what we've done as part of our PFAS work across the state is when we look at potential or facilities like a landfill that may be having offsite migration of contaminants. And what we do is prioritize private well analyses within a radius around there. So when we look and find detections in a monitoring well that's leading us to believe that there may be offsite migration of contaminants and emerging contaminants, we look to see what those nearby water supplies are and prioritize them for sampling. We've done that in a number of locations across Long Island, especially with Suffolk County and the Suffolk County Water Authority at various inactive landfills, and that work is very much continuing. With regard to Brookhaven, again, I'm not aware of any private wells that are in the vicinity of the landfill that would sort of rise to the level of us needing to get engaged. But that's again why I want to just review this with the team and give you a more fuller answer again on exactly what we're requiring with that sampling and what we may have done moving off site if there have been any detections of contaminants.
Okay, we just have I'm sorry, Katie.
No, you should turn to all the questions that are here. Go ahead.
Okay, we just have about 3 more questions from BLARG, and then we're gonna open it up. The next person is Maya.
Hi. So thank you for being here. I have a general question for you about remediation, but I just want to voice my frustration a little bit about you are the chief of staff of the DC, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And it just sounds to me that you're very unprepared or maybe lacking some knowledge about us, because there's a lot that you don't know, or a lot that you're maybe a little bit uninformed about us, considering how much you need to go back to your team and unpack or, you know, explore. You started by saying, and I'm quoting you, if this is an environmental justice area, to admitting that this is an environmental justice area, to, you know, keep saying, actually not knowing that there is a leak, you know, in the liner and there is existing plume. And it's a bit unfortunate that it took us, Karim, correct me if I'm wrong, 5 months to get this meeting. And here we are, and we actually are not getting answers. And you actually said that this is the beginning of this dialogue, right? And this is just kind of, you're putting us in this position that we have been trying, and we have been going through all the correct channels. And it's just a little bit, you have to understand how frustrated we are. Because we have been going through all the correct channels, and we have been trying, and the fact is that you don't even know who we are. As our good friend Monique said, we have been, some of us have been living here our entire life. Some of us have been living with this injustice, and we have been trying. So saying that this is frustrating is just, it's not even beginning to sort of kind of express how we feel. Moving on, since you know, since here we are and we should talk about these things, my question is about remediation. And this landfill was sold to this community before I was here in the 70s, as when this is going to be closed. It was sold as, you know, actually, I think there were illustration of ski slope on this, when this is going to be closed and how it's going to be closed. Now, there's a lot of conversation that this landfill is going to get closed in 2024. We are in 2021. There is no plan that we know of how it's going to get closed. And so my question is, when it's going to get closed, what is going to be your involvement in this, and how are we going to make sure that this is going to happen? And you were talking about community involvement, and that you are all about community involvement in their remediation. So when the landfill will be transformed into a recreational facility promised by the New York State, are you going to take part of it, and are we going to be involved, and how is that going to happen?
Yep. So again, look, I'm not trying to be evasive in any way when I say I need to take this back to the team. Again, when I say we wanted to start this dialogue tonight, since Karim reached out to me personally and involved me in the conversation a few weeks ago, that's when we worked to get this set up. I didn't realize that this had become an issue, and that's why we wanted to step in and work with our regional counterparts in Aphrodite and the team down there to have this conversation and to start it. And when I say to start it is, I have gone on the Facebook page and some of the information that's out there about what your perspectives are, but I really wanted to get a true sense of what your questions are so that we can get you the information that you need. And that's why it's a start tonight. And I am not a super technical expert when it comes to the day-to-day operations of our landfill regulations and how we oversee it for the very specific questions that you're asking. And that's why I wanted to start the dialogue. So I take those questions back and we continue to enhance the dialogue and give you the information that you need. And that's really why I wanted to start it from that standpoint tonight, and then look for opportunities to continue that in the future, and look at opportunities to get the right technical experts on to walk you through these complex issues in the way that we approach it overall. So when it comes to landfill closures, again, that's why I want to look specifically about Brookhaven's landfill closure plan, what it requires, the community engagement steps that are in there, and if there aren't specific ones, how we can build those in to address the comments that I'm hearing tonight. So that's why when I say I want to take that back to the team and develop that, that's one of the things I know Aphrodite has written down as being the key things to look at here is the closure plan, that process, and providing more information to you about what that process is and the steps that are involved in it. So we'll definitely work on that and get back to you in the near future and continue that conversation.
I would like to bring it back to the fact is that I really do appreciate you being here. And the fact is that because we reached out to you, this meeting is actually happening. So we had to go all the way to the top to actually get our regional people here. So the fact that we did reach to the top did make this meeting happen.
Yeah, and let me just say too, that wasn't me trying to speak disparagingly about our regional staff in
No,
any form.
I
just want you to
understand.
know, just hear me out for a sec. We're going through a big transition, and our Region 1 staff on Long Island has been on the forefront of the COVID response, from standing up some of the testing sites at Jones Beach and Stony Brook to working on the vaccination sites, to our former regional director, Carrie Gallagher, coming up to be our executive deputy commissioner, DEC, and now becoming the acting deputy secretary for the environment for the governor. There have been a lot of transitions in the region, and there's been a lot of work that they've been undertaking. So when it came up to my level, it's like, okay, I saw that there was a need to help out our regional staff to make sure that they were engaging, because I know they're spread very thin on a lot of the other priorities that they have working on. And I didn't want you to think that DEC wasn't paying attention. So that's why I wanted to help them out and keep this and really start this conversation with you all, and just let you know that we're listening to you and we're taking this seriously. So
I understand, but moving, onward, right? Yep. We need to create a system of trust, right? So here I am, and I'm asking you for BLARG, for our community that is established here. For us, let me ask you an existential question. What would be the difference for us if the DEC didn't exist? Because right now, I don't know what is the answer for us. What's the difference?
Well, that is a deep existential question that would take me probably hours to truly unpack, because when you look at the depth and breadth of our programs that we do, from marine resources to fish and wildlife, to water quality, to air quality, to specific facilities like landfills, to other facilities in the permitting process that we oversee, we are a massive agency that has a huge portfolio of regulatory responsibility for all facets of our life. I mean, I joke with my friends and colleagues that pretty much every day I learn something new that DEC oversees. I mean, everything from the scents that are in certain products and odor producing things, all the way to massive hazardous waste incinerators in the state, and everything in between. We have a huge role to play in your backyard and beyond. And
I'm really happy that you feel that way, but do you understand that from our point of view, it makes no difference for us?
Sure, and that's why we're always trying to take steps, and usually dialogues like this are important to starting that process when people feel and don't have a full appreciation for what the DEC does on their behalf day in and day out. And I'm passionate about that, and because I work for this agency, but even prior to me coming to state service, I always viewed the DEC as an essential tool that we've created as a state to make sure that there are people that are out there that are paying attention to the issues that you care about in protecting our environment and our public health. And it's difficult when, for me personally, to hear that, you know, there are people that still don't fully understand and appreciate what we do. We're always trying to take those steps to have that dialogue and to advance that understanding. So now knowing that there is, you know, more information that we can be putting out about our roles and responsibilities, we're going to take that opportunity to work with you on that, because again, we're here for you. We have created this agency to protect public health in your environment, and that is our goal. And I hope this gives you a little impression about how we approach that overall as a state, and our commitment to you in that regard.
Well, I hope that instead of, you know, I hope that maybe instead of, it's, you know, I'm happy to hear how passionate you are, but I think maybe the approach should be of maybe your approach should change, and you should maybe reach to the people. You are working for the people, right? I'm not working for you. You should work for me, I think.
We do work for you, and again,
Yeah, well,
that's why Rosa, you know, started out with at least our EJ perspective on the engagement that we do, and sort of how we approach that. And as we find opportunities to improve that engagement, that's what we do. And again,
yeah,
I hate saying it's a start, but
exactly. So as you know, as an educator myself, I would like to hear the, you know, my wish would be to hear that your answer, that your passion would go to outreach and help, right? And educating yourself and others in how to get your work and expand your reach and get more work done versus, you know, hear more about your own passion, if I may say so myself.
I mean, look, I brought myself into this personally because I wanted you to know where I'm coming from, but you know, I think you're hitting fundamentally on the head is what I'm trying to convey, is that this passion that I personally have is what I bring to the job every day, and it is what my colleagues I know bring to the job every day. And yes, sometimes as technocrats, we get very focused on the process and the facilities themselves and all our obligations we have to oversee it, that we sometimes don't do as good enough of a job of community engagement. But that's why we're always taking steps to improve that. These conversations are critical to that effort because it allows me to hear and see where we need to improve that. So that's something that we want to do, and that's something that we're always trying to improve upon, because we have some of the best technical experts in the country that are really working on your behalf day in, day out on facilities like this. And I want to make sure that you understand that they are there and that they are doing this work. And you have the opportunity to really hear from them with regard to how they approach it and how they look at the data and how they take the actions that they take. So we're going to keep this dialogue going and look to have future engagement efforts like this.
Okay.
Okay, thank you guys
Thank you
so much. We're gonna now pass it on to Dennis.
Yes, hello, how you doing? I pretty much don't have a question. I just want to say, I think it's time that the communities surrounding the landfill should have some type of air monitors to monitor what we're breathing in, because it's bad around here. You know, people are making complaints to you guys. You know, you're getting the complaints. You know, it's been going on for years. I think it's time that we need to know what we're breathing in from this landfill, and I think monitors would help. And it also collects data. That's all.
Sure. Aphrodite, do you want to speak at all just about the monitoring that we do currently around the landfill? I know our most recent fact sheet does speak to that, but can you just address that a little bit?
Yes, I think there are two different types of monitors that we have going on around the landfill. One's called the Jerome meter. Another one is an Oculog or Aculog. So we do have several set up around the landfill. So we have monitors actually on the landfill and also monitors that are surrounding the landfill. So if there are exceedances of certain gases that we find, we can be notified immediately and find out what exactly is causing those exceedances, and those can be taken care of quickly. So there are monitors surrounding the landfill, on the landfill, and in the surrounding areas, especially areas that we know have had issues in the past.
Yes.
So
I'm sorry.
those do exist.
Okay, but like in my community where I live here in North Belport, I think it would be good that we have one installed here, because this landfill has been affecting us for 40 something years, and I'm a former employee of the landfill. I can no longer work at the landfill due to exposure of toxins, and it's just, and I smell them in the community still. So it's just, I would recommend that some type of monitoring be put in these communities also. Thank you.
No, thank you for that. And I'll just add too, I mean, air monitoring is an issue that we hear across the state. And Rosa talked about the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act and the work that the Climate Justice Working Group is doing on identifying disadvantaged communities. That's actually feeding into air monitoring or air quality monitoring enhancements that we're going to be making statewide. The CLCPA does require us to do air monitoring for disadvantaged communities. We're looking to see how we comply with that and potentially expand that out. Again, the work that the working group is doing now to develop that disadvantaged communities definition is what we are going to use as we look to expand that out. But it's something we hear consistently across the state, and it's something that we and our air quality experts are always looking at evolving and adapting and enhancing. So this is something, again, I'm going to say it, take back to the team that we hear your request for this, and it's something that we can build into our processes overall, because we are doing some air monitoring around the landfill, as Aphrodite pointed out, but more broadly, looking at your community as well, that's something we can factor in, and I know Rosa will take that note down as well as the disadvantaged community work continues to unfold.
Okay, and our final question before we open up the stack is going to be right back to Monique.
Hello, I'm gonna try to make it quick because I know a lot of people want to talk, and rightfully so. I do want to point out, like everyone has said pretty much, that we appreciate that you came to this meeting. But we have been asking for this meeting for a long time, and we do want to get your actual commitment to following up with us. We have these weekly meetings. We have these meetings weekly, so it would almost be best in your best interest to come to our meetings more frequently. They are open to the public, and we, as you can see, we've been on this call for 2 hours, and we haven't even gotten to the community's questions yet. So I want to apologize to anybody who is on here and has been waiting this whole time to get their question answered. So that just speaks to how much the community cares about this this issue and how much attention the DEC needs to pay towards it. And I do want to note, like you said, and other people have said, that you are going to take this back to your team. You're going to take this back to your team. Can you tell us who is that team? Who's on that team? Why isn't North Belport represented on that team? And will the team come back with you next time you come? This way, we don't have to go back and forth. We can just have the answers directly with the team. And then other than that, my real question is about the finding of the town. So the town has been fined, like Aphrodite said, 2016, 2019 for violations. So my question is, where is that money going? Is that money going to the team when it's supposed to be or should be going directly to the community? And what I'm really asking is, or what I'm really saying is, the town of North Belport, the residents here, we are owed for suffering for damn near 50 years. We're owed these reparations. So I'm just asking, how do you feel about that? And specifically, where does that money go?
Sure, no, good question. And I imagine Aphrodite can work on this in a little more detail, but we did have a consent order in 2019 with the town that had you know, a $250,000 total penalty, and $150,000 of that was invested in an environmental benefit project. And that specific project was put out in a press release that again is on our website. And there's more information on that. And we've had previous public engagement sessions in the past on that. But, you know, the specific environmental benefit project that was there is all detailed online. But Aphrodite, is there more that you want to say on where some of the penalties have gone with regard to the community?
I don't now have that information on hand, but I will check with our staff and find out if we have a proposed environmental benefit project from the town, and if so, what that entails.
When you say environmental protection program, what is that? What are you saying specifically? Because I don't know, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people on this call doesn't know what that actually means. So
Sure.
if you can address that. And then I also wanted to double back on what Dennis had said about with the air monitors. Now, one of the things that we learned by researching, a lot of times these air monitors that are already in place break down or not actually monitoring the air quality all the time because of weather, the different issues. So yeah, because of the temperature, things like that. So that is a concern because we need these monitors to be up to snuff for the times and the weatherization so that it could be monitored all the time. And if these things are being monitored all the time, why don't we get reports on what is going on? Like what is the actual data that's coming from these monitors? You know, we want monitors, yes, but we don't want monitors to have monitors. We want monitors to have information and to extend on that, we want to know the information, we want it readily available to us, but we want action behind it. If we're not going to get action behind, what is the point of having the monitor? What is the point of collecting all this data if we're never going to see any action? Anything getting shut down, any kind of remediation to the community for the harm that they are being felt every day. Like we are under the gun 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365. So I'm sorry if we're putting you under the gun right now, but this is how it has to be.
No, I appreciate that. So, and I would just say, you know, with regard to the environmental benefit projects or EBP, there are specific provisions in the statute that guide how we approach that with our enforcement. And an EBP is something that's negotiated through our consent orders that we do when there's a facility that's under order for us to make corrective actions and pay penalties. So again, the one press release that I know our fact sheets do link to goes into that and what we've required of the town in that regard. You know, we can provide some more information just for background on the environmental benefit project process overall. But generally what we do is when there's a specific deficiency that we've enforced against, we require the corrective actions to be undertaken. With regard to the penalties, instead of just having that go to DEC in our penalty account, what we may require is a portion of that to be invested back into the community to address some of the problems or impacts that the community received. So that's what we require through the EBP process. And that's why we want to make sure that communities actually see that when we take an enforcement action, they can see the results of that in some way, not just through the corrective actions, but through something else on the ground in the community. And that's what we've been working towards with regard to that 2019 consent order. And we'll make sure there's more information that's easily available put up online. And just again, with air monitoring, you know, with regard to continuous monitoring and the equipment that we use, we always try and use the best technology available and the best instrumentation and equipment available to look at these facilities and sites like this. We're always continuing to evaluate the best available science and the new instrumentation that we can bring to bear on things like this. And we're always adaptively managing our air quality monitoring. And that's something that we want to improve. And again, I'm going to take that one back because I want to make sure that we are bringing to bear everything that we should be bringing to bear on this facility on your behalf.
All right, I think we're gonna go ahead and
or Aphrodite, was there anything more that you wanted to say on the monitors overall?
Oh, yes, just for the air monitors regarding the temperature issues. It's true there are some monitors that cannot function in the cold weather. We have two different types of monitors that we use. We have a gyrometer and we have the otologs. So one is specific that can only really be used in the warmer weathers. And then that's why we switch over to the other type of monitor that can be used in the cold weather, so that there's not like months on end where there is no monitoring. So we do have monitors that go in both cold and warm weather.
all right, so we're gonna go ahead and open the stack up to the community. And first up is going to be Mike Ewall.
Okay, hi, this is Mike Ewall with Energy Justice Network. I have a handful of questions and comments. I'll try to keep them tight. And if there are questions for the team, just flag that and take a note of it, and we'll hope we'll see the response. So I heard it mentioned about there being radon issues. Do you know if the landfill could be a source of radon? Because I was just looking at radon maps, and it doesn't seem to be a naturally high amount of radon on Long Island at all.
I do know that there are pockets of radon that has been found on Long Island. I don't know, and I haven't looked at the maps in particular about the geologic, sort of formulation that's there, and whether or not there are radon issues currently there versus naturally occurring versus something that may be caused by the landfill. So again, I want to look at the team just to see how they would address that question.
Okay, fair enough. Knowing that much of what is there is incinerator ash in that landfill, is there regular testing in the air and water for lead and cadmium, which are the things that leach most from incinerator ash?
So again, I think, what we talked about a little bit was just, again, working with our experts to make sure we put a full accounting of everything that's sampled for and the timeline and process that it's sampled for. So we'll work to build that out. I know there is information that is on our website currently. Oh shoot, I clicked off of it, but where you can see some of that information, but we'll make sure that it's up there in a very easy way to see, so you know exactly what we're monitoring for and how you can access that information.
Okay, great. And if you could include in that report back about mercury, dioxins, and tritium, which are also big issues for landfills generally, but specifically incinerator ash, especially because the incinerators they're taking from have carbon injection systems, which increases the dioxins while it takes it out of the air, but concentrates it in the ash. So that should be a big concern. If you're not aware, you mentioned we're using best available technology to monitor air quality. Multi-metals continuous emissions monitors exist. I know a lot of state regulators are not aware of this because they're not in wide use yet, but they're commercially available. I'm happy to get you in touch with the vendor that provides them. These should be used so they have real-time monitoring, could be hooked up to an internet website so people can see the results, so the metals in the air can be detected. There was also mention of two transfer stations proposed. There's also science showing that there are mercury emissions from trash transfer stations, largely from fluorescent bulbs that break in the process of the transfers. So I would encourage DEC to look at regulating mercury at these transfer stations. And the last couple of questions I have are about, I commented in the chat earlier about Title VI of the Civil Rights Act and how DEC would comply with that. It's an affirmative obligation that you have as a recipient of federal funds to not have a discriminatory effect on racial minorities. It doesn't matter if it's intentional. It sounded like it was equivocal earlier, but has DEC identified this community as a protected class under the Civil Rights Act? Is there an answer to that?
Rosa, can you speak to that one in particular with regard to how our the construct of our EJ program works in synergy with the Civil Rights Act?
Sure, I can comment on that. We don't identify areas as protected classes. Those are protected classes based on the Constitution. What we do is we use census information about those protected classes. So going into race and ethnicity to identify environmental justice areas. And that's what our policy has in CP 29. The definition looks at census information related to how in the census block group, community members have identified as one of those minority groups that are protected classes or based on income.
Okay. So is the agency's position that there cannot be a violation of the Civil Rights Act if a facility is in compliance with environmental regulations? Or does DEC recognize that compliance with the Civil Rights Act is an independent legal obligation regardless of environmental compliance?
Well, I'll just say I have to get one of our counsels on the phone to unpack that, since we're not lawyers here that are on tonight with regard to that very specific question. But I think, as Rosa said, we have very specific provisions in our EJ law and commissioner's policy that we follow that really do guide those efforts. But with regard to any synergies or connections to something like the Civil Rights Act, I need more lawyers on the phone to really unpack that appropriately.
Okay, yeah, if you could have that answered, that would be great. I'll put the question in the chat so you have it directly. Thank you so much.
Okay, up next, we have Dr. Georgette Greer-Key.
Good evening, everybody. My question follows up nicely. You do have on your website reference to the Civil Rights Act, so I would be interested in that answer also, because essentially we are living separate and unequal at this point. Your mission statement speaks specifically to the fact that you are fighting to make sure that we have access to liberty, economic and social prosperity, and that is exactly what we do not have. Also, you have in your mission statement that you are looking for the health and well-being of us, and we don't have that, and environmental injustice. And all of the definitions that you have, you're not ensuring that we have access to all of the things that are listed there. And I see on your website that you have specifically a plan for forestry, a 10-year plan for forestry. And I wanted to know, how committed are you to economic justice? And if you were thinking of having a plan for environmental injustice, as many of my colleagues have stated, we have not heard from the DEC. With all of the plans that we have heard of, all of the labels that have been put on our community, non-attainable air zone, and all these different things that have been placed on us, and we have benefited none. We pay the same amount of taxes. The other thing that I was happy to hear you talk about is the fact of what all you do. And I'd like to draw your attention to a plan that was put out in 2014. It is the Community Air Screen Program project that was put out. And I want to draw your attention to page 3, where it talks about all of the areas that impact not just the landfill, but the roads, the compost yards. Everything that is affecting us in our whole entire area does not allow us to have pursuit of liberty, freedom, and happiness in our own communities, that we cannot move around freely. And this is the job of the DEC, according to your mission statement, that says that is to conserve, improve, and protect New York's natural resources and environment, and to prevent and abate control water, land, and air pollution in order to enhance the health, safety, and welfare of the people of the state of New York and the overall economic and social well-being. The DEC's goal is to achieve this mission through simultaneously pursuing environmental quality, public health, economic prosperity, and social well-being, including environmental justice and the empowerment of individuals to participate in environmental decisions that affect their lives. And so far, all levels of government have failed us to this end. How are you expecting? We need you to do more. And we need to be included in the conversation, because environmental injustice includes the people that is being on the benefit of receiving this treatment is supposed to also come to the table with making solutions that they see as the solution that they want to see, and not just being told what to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Ryan up next.
Hi, my name is Ryan Madden. I'm an organizer with the Long Island Progressive Coalition. We're also on the steering committee of New Yorker News, which is the coalition responsible for passing the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. I've done a lot of work around trying to implement it. So I wanted to harp back to a question that was asked earlier, because I've worked around the implementation, I know how much power the state has in this and how much the state is really controlling it in a lot of ways. So I wanted to hear a little bit more of a direct or active response from Rosa Mendez, if possible, because there was a kind of like, well, the Climate Justice Working Group is working on this, you know, the designation, but it's like you're the chair of that and a part of it. And again, the DEC is heavily kind of asserting its authority here. So I was hoping you could speak a little bit more about what you're doing to ensure that Indigenous communities are specifically engaged in the development of the criteria. As you mentioned, the need for the nation-to-nation correspondence, because I'll say in my work too, I'm in conversations with nations across New York State under their official council structures, and it's clear that there's been an abdication of responsibility in the nation-to-nation relationship around this bill in particular, and it feels like that criteria can't be developed if you're not engaging in that way and ensuring that their perspectives are incorporated, like broken treaty rights as a qualifying criteria.
Yeah, Rosa, do you want to?
Thanks, Ryan.
Go ahead.
Sure. And I can say, because we do our relationship through the government to government perspective, a lot of that is happening not in the Climate Justice Working Group meetings, right? So we do have a consultation process that we're following to include Indigenous groups, as well as within the Climate Action Council's process. I will say for the Climate Justice Working Group, I didn't get too much into what they're considering because they are still in the process of considering those criteria. So I didn't want to lead anybody astray and talk specifically about things because they haven't been voted on, they haven't been settled. I will say that everything the Climate Justice Working Group is doing is open to the public. All of the meetings are publicly viewable. We post everything afterwards so you can watch the recordings if you can't make it to those meeting times. So any of that information that you're interested in is available on the climate.ny.gov website. And I will point out that we do have a meeting coming up on next Friday, March 12th at 11 a.m. And that media advisory went out today as well with the attendee link for public viewing. We also have a email box set up for people to engage with the Climate Justice Working Group as well, that I can drop into the chat if anyone wants to ask questions about the process or about anything that we're doing. We're happy to answer those questions as well.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Just quickly, if I could, again, based on my own conversations, my understanding is that you are maybe not specifically you, but like Dave Witt or other folks at DEC are not engaging in that nation-to-nation conversation about the climate bill specifically. That you have, the last conversation was in 2019 and there's been nothing since then. So if it's not happening in those spaces and not happening in the nation-to-nation process, where is it happening?
So I don't know, who you're specifically referencing, but our Indian Nations Affairs Coordinator is roped in on this process, and we are engaging and coming up with the best path forward for consultation. And that includes, it's not just the Climate Justice Working Group, it's the Climate Action Council as well.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to follow up because you said who he's talking to. Me and Hannah are right here, and we haven't been contacted, and I believe Regina's on the call. We're from the Settecott Nation. We haven't been called. We haven't been spoken. Have you reached out to us? Do you know specifically that you reached out to this nation?
We reach out to, as I said before, a lot of our contact points live in the environmental programs of the nation government. So those would be our contact points.
So you only speak to people that are in designated reservation areas? Is that what you're saying? What about the people who live in communities but are still under the census counted as indigenous?
No, so my office, we are a community facing office. We'll engage, and we do try to engage with all communities. What I'm saying is for the specific consultation process that we do go through the government offices of specific Indian nations. So, I'm happy to continue our engagement. Dave Witt is happy to engage with any indigenous community member, but I'm just for the consultation process, I want to be specific about that. That is when we go through the nation government.
And how is that different than when you speak to the community? Like, what is the difference? Because what it sounds like is if you're talking nation to nation, if the nation is not federally or state recognized, you probably won't be speaking to them because that's been
environmental injustice.
That's been our
Right. So I'm trying to make a distinction between the consultation process and what my office does, which is community engagement. So yes, we are happy to engage with you and community members.
Okay. Well, what's the difference? I'm not understanding. Like you said, there is a difference, but you haven't, said what that difference is.
Yeah, the consultation process is generated by a nation government. So that's the difference I'm trying to make, that we do community engagement, but there's also a consultation process that is generated by the nation government. So they typically will come to us, or if we have an action that we know is going to be of interest or will impact one of the nations, then we contact them with a consultation request. So I'm trying, it's a formal versus informal kind of thing.
Okay, but neither is happening, is what I'm saying.
And again, I'm happy to, go ahead, Sean.
No, I was just gonna say, we're always looking for opportunities to improve that engagement. And I think as Rosa was gonna say, we'll be happy to continue that conversation with you on that.
You want to say that?
No, I'm not gonna add any more to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Sarah.
Yes, hi, sorry. So my question, let me just pull out my notes. Okay, so this has been an issue both pre-COVID, and I'm assuming that it'll unfortunately be an issue once COVID even passes, for all we know. So I'm a journalist at Stony Brook University, and I've been covering this story for quite some time. And I'm just curious, so I hear you making a lot of promises tonight, and verbatim, you've been saying that you're going to take a lot of things back to the team. So how exactly do you plan on winning trust back from this community? And can you ensure that you will actually follow through on anything that you're promising? A lot of what's being discussed tonight seems as though it's having direct physical consequences on the people that live in this community and in this area. And there is no team that has been identified. You are the only member here tonight. This has been going on for 2.5 hours, and it seems as though everyone in this group has been trying to get in contact with someone from your team for a while. Again, I just want to reiterate that this seems like something that's going to have direct physical and mental consequences on the people who live in this area. Yeah, so I'm just curious, what are you going to do to win back trust from these people?
Well, obviously, it starts with conversations like this and our commitments that we're making tonight to continue these dialogues and post this information and continue to enhance our information that we provide to groups. So, I mentioned an FAQ sheet based on some of the questions that we received tonight. We're always looking to enhance our website, put out more community correspondence, and again, work directly with you and your leadership here to get you the information that you need and keep these conversations going. So,
but it seems as though that it's been going in like a circle for quite some time with FAQ sheet, coming back, having these conversations. I think the time for conversation has almost like passed. What direct action are you going to take?
Well, again, we've taken a lot of direct action, which is some of what we discussed today and some of what's on our website with regard to forward-facing actions based on the complaints that we see. The most recent newsletter that we've put out really details those steps and corrective actions that are underway by the town on this facility, and really, I think, set the stage for where we're continuing to ratchet down on this facility based on these complaints and concerns that we're hearing. And again, to keep that dialogue open, it starts with sessions like this, and obviously moving forward, doing more of this. And that's something that we'll look to do.
So can you clearly identify something that you've done that has had like a positive impact on this community and in the people in this community that has directly helped anyone regarding this issue? Is there like any direct change that you can, concrete change you can point out or describe to anyone in this group or to me in this moment?
Sure. I mean, just some of the things, again, looking specifically at the fact sheet that we put out, the most recent one yesterday. We've enhanced operating parameters and cover materials on the landfill to reduce odors. Aphrodite spoke a lot about the air monitoring that we're doing around the landfill overall.
Sorry, I apologize. I'm not very well versed in this language. Can you like describe this maybe in very simple, like layman's terms? Like, what did you do and what is the effect of what you've done? Like very simple, plain English. And again, this is me. I'm not very well versed in this kind of
Yeah, sure. And again, I think I point to the materials that are available online that really walk you through this, and the fact sheet that we put out yesterday.
Right, just in case people don't have access to online materials, it is COVID, people are in different areas, so just in case, just so people have a clear
Sure, and like again, I'll touch on some of these and in future conversations that we have, and we can make sure that you're provided that information. But with regard to like the protocols and operations on cover materials, when I say cover materials, landfills are required on a regular basis. Some are daily, some are more frequently than that or less frequently than that. They have to cover the piles in which are the active working face of the landfill and where materials are going. So there are specific requirements for putting dirt and soils on top as a way of covering those piles and reducing odors overall. So that's one of the corrective actions that we've required the facility to undertake to make sure that they're using best management practices to reduce those odors. We've got different treatment systems using hydrogen peroxide that are being constructed or that are already in use. Again, is another way of pre-treating some of the wastes that are being deposited on parts of the site to reduce odors and cut down on odors overall. We've improved and required corrective actions on their operation and maintenance protocols for the facility overall, again, to look at making structural changes to the way in which the facility is handling waste to reduce the odors and some of the community.
Right, sorry, I'm just gonna interrupt you very quickly because I'm still unfortunately very lost. Based on the present conversation that has occurred tonight, to put it very, very, very simply, based on the current conversation that has occurred tonight, what has you and this team that we've been hearing about all night done to help the people in this community? So what is the difference between today and 5 years ago, to put it in even simpler terms?
Well, I mean, some of the actions that I was just walking you through are the direct actions that we at the department have undertaken and required of this facility to improve the way in which they're operating in your community to address the concerns that you're telling me tonight have occurred in the past. And if they're still occurring, again, that's why I pivot back to making sure that we are getting complaints into the complaint hotline so that they can be logged accordingly. And that forms the basis of our actions and ongoing oversight of this facility. So that's, I mean, those are the actions that we've undertaken. And again, you know, listening to what we're hearing in this dialogue tonight with regard to some of the other facets of what we need to provide you with information, that's what we're going to take back and work to enhance that information flow so that you can see more directly some of those actions that we've undertaken. But there is a long track record of this, of the department taking action against this facility and requiring actions, some of which I just walked through. Others are detailed, you know, in this most recent fact sheet, and others are on the website, like the enforcement action that we've undertaken.
Sure, and just because I don't want to take up more time, I'm sure other people have things that they'd like to add. Can your team maybe, just because I'm still unfortunately a little bit lost, can your team commit to possibly putting out some kind of timeline or some kind of spreadsheet detailing what actions are going to happen on what day and what they're going to exactly address, just so the community isn't left in this, you know, like abyss of being totally unsure of what's occurring? So is there like a timeline that's going to be put out? Is there something that's going to detail this is going to happen on this day, this is going to happen on this day, this is what action is going to be taken? Is your team going to do that? Or it's a very simple yes or no.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're always going to continue to enhance the information that we provide.
No, excuse me, I'm sorry, a timeline.
Well, again, look, well, what I would do is first have you take a look at the fact sheet that's there that walks through the corrective actions that are underway currently, what are completed and what are in progress and under construction. If there are greater details that you need on that, let us know so that we can provide more of that specific information that you're
Sure,
looking
just
for.
one more time and I'll ask the question again. And then if it's not answered, then I guess, Michelle, please feel free to move on. Is your team going to put out a timeline moving forward describing what is going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we're looking to enhance, and that's what we've been talking about tonight. I pivot back to the fact sheet, the most recent one that goes into some of those actions. If there is a need for greater detail on that, we can always step that down and be more specific on that. But we want to always get you the information that you need in the way that you want to see it. And if there's a need for more specificity, we're happy to provide that and look to incorporate that into more materials in the future.
Sure. I look forward to seeing a timeline being put out soon then. All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you for your question, Sarah. And I'm sorry that unfortunately you didn't get an answer that you wanted, and neither did anyone
else. Yeah, unfortunately.
But we are thankful for you for asking that. Next up is going to be John McNamara. Sir Amos 1 on the screen.
John, unmute.
There we go. We've been talking a lot about the zero waste concept with regard to the town of Brookhaven and, you know, the whole general Long Island picture. I've noticed that communities across the country that move in the zero waste direction pretty much seem to adopt the pay as you throw concept, because, you know, most people don't buy into the recycle, you know, unless there's a kind of a penalty with regard to it, right? So I've noticed in the town of Brookhaven waste management report that they filed that over the last 10 years, they're consistently in the 20s for recycling, 23, 24%. Communities that have adopted pay as you throw get into the 70s, 80s, 90s. I noticed also in their plan that in responding to the DEC, that they pretty much have been saying that, you know, putting you all and not really responding to that, is saying it's, you know, might be too expensive, too complicated, whatever. Is there any thought, Sean, on your part of being a little bit more aggressive with the town and with the region in terms of moving that way, so that we really start to have sort of comprehensive regional plan dealing with this and putting more pressure? You know, the town has this beautiful recycling facility that they've, you know, recently redone and everything. It's great, but you know, with just 1 out of every 4 residents really availing themselves of it. I think we just have to move in another direction here that's a little bit more comprehensive. Any thoughts on that, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, those are some of the options that we're looking at and trying to create the right framework for addressing waste management overall on a statewide basis. Something like a pay-as-you-throw program is going to need, state legislative actions and authorities in order to require that. And those are just some of the tools that we're looking at as a way of improving this overall. So it's something that's definitely on our radar screen, and it's something that we are going to be exploring as we look to address these issues.
Great. Thank you.
So Michelle, I know Rosa, Aphrodite, and I all have hard stops very soon. So if we could do like 2 or 3 more questions.
That's perfect. That's about all that's left.
Okay.
Awesome.
Great.
Karen, you are up next.
Hi there, I'm unmuted now. Hi, Sean. Thank you for coming. I'm Karen Bloomer. I'm with Open Space Council, and our group is a partner and a member of BLARG. I wanted to thank you, besides for being here, for your commitment to a continuing dialogue. And I was wondering if you could commit yourself to actually tonight coming back at a specific time, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, with, some of your team, expert, attorney if needed, and addressing this, and then maybe addressing Sarah's comment on creating a timeline, even if it's, something for this community. So would you be able to do that?
Well, I mean, I do want to better understand the timeline that you're looking for in particular, so that we can build that out appropriately. It's not really clear to me exactly what sort of.
Well, it wouldn't be done by you as much as with the community, to look at some of these issues and see what is the problem, what's the status, is that our job, or is it a Department of Health and, talk to Joe Schmo there, or yes, this is DEC, and let's project, we can do this in a month, and we'll check back in a month and see how we're doing. Something, that's a mutual understanding, the conversation that, that you really thankfully keep coming up with. So this is a conversation, and you and Aphrodite don't go back and just send something written, but it's an exchange to explore, with some of your team who actually knows. I mean, hopefully, will that be the solid waste team also?
Definitely. So look, what I want to do is, I know my schedule personally is pretty tight in March. It's the state budget season. So we've got a lot of other actions and activities that are underway. I think what we could do is look in the April time frame to have another conversation with this group on a Friday night, and we'll look to work with Michelle and Karim and others to figure out which date works best for the folks that we want to bring on to continue the conversation.
Okay, and I did want to add that a couple of people have mentioned tonight, we do have correspondence that DEC is disavowing itself of being responsible for a regional waste plan, and that it's up to the Long Island Regional Planning Council, and they are saying the same thing. And a number of us, have been starting to review the recommendations over the years of many agencies, and analyzing how many have been done. We do not want reports anymore. We don't want studies. So we would like to bring up to you the concept of a regional zero waste plan. No more waste. That's shuffling waste around. But so a number of us, are already working with some of the legislature on this. And I would like to know, you've mentioned experts, creative, the best creative minds. Who are some of those? Because we need to be in touch with them. We're already in touch with some legislators, with the industry, and we need to start getting this down so it's no more reports, We need a timeline for actions. And it needs to be on a platform that's not just behind a closed door with the Regional Planning Council and the DEC that then kind of issues something. No, this has got to be a conversation between the experts, people who know what they're doing. This community, underserved communities must be represented. So we're trying to work toward that. We're, again, the legislature is in, budget crunch time, so that we won't be moving till about April. But so who are some of your creative minds?
Sure, and we'll put together that list and obviously have some on the next time that we meet so that you can introduce them and hear from them moving forward. You know, on the zero waste plan proposal, I mean, I like it. It's something that I think we all agree needs to happen in general, and we'll create the right forum and framework to have those discussions and, you know, factor it into things like the pay-as-you-throw program that we just heard about as well. So, you know, appreciate those thoughts, and that's definitely something that we'll take into consideration as we work to address these issues on the island.
Well, who's in charge of solid waste? Who's on your team for the region?
Aphrodite. I mean, look, I think with regard to the specific names of folks, you know, from Merlange, who's our acting Regional 1 director, on down to her core team, we are changing and evolving that based on some retirements and movement around the region. So, you know, I want to get that right list of folks, and I think moving forward on the fact sheets that we put together, we'll add some more of the names of those folks so you can see and know the experts that we have. And then, you know, on our website as well, there's more information both on the region and statewide level with regard to our various teams who work on these issues. But we'll look to make sure that we're putting those names together and that you're having opportunities to hear directly from some of those folks.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Caroline.
Hi, Caroline Wilkinson, Kids' Rights to Environmental Equality Today. I was very surprised to hear that you didn't know about some of these things like the radon in the drinking water and the PCBs found in monitoring wells in the community, because I know some have been doing this for decades. I only started talking about this about 3 years ago, 2017. And I know your name looks very familiar, Sean, but I'm not positive. I know I've wrote to many, many people at the DEC. Aphrodite, I know had many correspondence with. So we sent the results of over 20 people in the community who found radon in their drinking water. The radon in the drinking water, radon is not naturally occurring on Long Island. And if it was, it's 200, maybe 300. There are things up to 1,200 found in our community. And now this is East Patchogue, Bellport, North Bellport, and our local school, Frank P. Long. Also at Frank P. Long, there were PCBs found in the monitoring well that were above EPA levels. Aphrodite told me, but you don't drink that. It's not in your drinking water. It was in the monitoring well. But you were talking about monitoring wells. And so I would think afterwards that somebody, even because we begged for it to be tested, because these are children in the community, not only the community, children in the community, the children in that school, to have the tested water tested. Nobody did. So then I was thinking, well, they must realize that if it's in the monitoring well, it comes up through the soil where all those children play. But nobody tested. And they said Suffolk County Water Authority said there's no PCBs. But Suffolk County Water Authority told me they never tested for PCBs in the drinking water. But it went round and around and around. And now Suffolk County Water Authority says that, well, they test monitoring wells. Do you know Suffolk County Water Authority blends their wells? So they can take a little bit of bad water from this well, a little bit of bad water from that well, and then they blend it together. And they pick which monitoring wells that they can test from. Not all wells are tested. And I have had decades of water reports to prove that. So this was known, Carrie Gallagher got it, many people at the DEC, the EPA, and Aphrodite had all received this information, and nobody did anything. So now here we are in 2021, and everyone's like, oh, I never heard about radon in the drinking water. I never heard about PCBs. And that's very, very, very concerning. I have hundreds of emails proving that that's not the case. So my concern is that you're sitting here saying the same things that I heard 4 years ago and nothing was done. Now we have the PCBs that should have been tested. The other thing is that what you used for, many times I heard back that the testing that we had done, that our community paid for, 150,000, I think, for the air quality testing, what our community, our tax dollars went to for testing at our school. You guys are using that information. We didn't get reimbursed for that. There were errors in the information. We asked to have it privately done by another company. Nobody did. And plus, that was based on grown men exposed for 1 hour. Grown men exposed for 1 hour because there's no laws for children or those that have compromised immune systems. Nobody could answer me that. And there's no laws. And that has to be changed. The other thing is I wonder if, because I asked several times and I got the runaround because I'm not a scientist, that did you take, even if you take the stuff that we paid for, $150,000, did you apply that to the DAR manual that the DEC puts out? Because in the DAR manual, it says that special populations have to be considered. And that means a certain mile radius around the dump or any of the other major contaminants that no other place in the country has. These 3 major contaminant places, pollutants, in their area. We're very unique in that sense. I wonder why. So did you use the DAR manual? The DAR manual says that you have to have special consideration for children, which there's a school, less than a mile away, nursing homes, there's a nursing home, there's hospitals. I did not find any evidence that was used. They also state that any kind of industry, which the landfill is an industry, has to take those contaminants that are found and use a certain criteria. So like one would be if you don't have an MLU for a contaminant, that there's no baseline for that contaminant, you don't know if it's carcinogenic or not, you're supposed to take those combined things. So you take one and you have the special formula, it's in your manual. But nobody could prove to me that you did that. Because I think if you did, even using the testing that I feel is flawed, I can't imagine that this place didn't get more fines earlier. So I want to know what the DAR manual was used. I want to see how that was used. I want to see why the PCBs, how you know that there's no PCBs in the drinking water, unless of course, and the other thing about the PFOA is that you said that you don't know of any wells. Finally, after the community complaints and I asked to see where the wells were, a well was shut down closest to our home. They had PFOAs and PFOSs. That wasn't put out to the public. That was because it was foiled. So I have the letter for that too. So we can prove that one. And let's see, what else do we have here? The monitoring of the plume. It's supposed to grow for 1 foot every day, right? One foot, I think like a day. When was the last time the plume was monitored? Because we cannot find any evidence of that. Every time I ask, nobody can give me any information about that. I think that's something that we should know about. The last time we have a report, we have a 1993 report of the health studies with a 2015 cover letter placed on top of it. That's not a study. I'm not a scientist, but I know that's not a study. So I would like to know how are we going to address these things that were brought up in 2017? And I'm sure for the old timers, it was brought up many times before. And now at 2021, I hear the same thing. And I hear that you guys have no idea that this is happening. Now, again, Sean, I'm not sure if it was you. I feel like I talked to everybody at the DEC, but I know for a fact it was Aphrodite and Carrie Gallagher. And I'm concerned because Carrie Gallagher, now you're saying she couldn't handle this at a regional level. Now you're telling me that she's on an upper level? That is extremely concerning.
So a lot to unpack there. So first, with regard to drinking water issues, that's in the purview of the Department of Health. So I'd have to put you in touch with our Department of Health colleagues, just with regard to drinking water monitoring requirements of the Suffolk County Water Authority, what they test for, where. So that, you know, for specific things on that, the Department of Health is going to be your resource. I know, Caroline, that our agency has correspondence with you back in at least 2018, if not more. So I want to work with Aphrodite in our regional office just to better understand some of your prior questions that you've raised to us. And again, just get you some additional information to some of the other questions that you've been asking. But these are all helpful. I've taken a lot of notes down, and we'll look to make sure that we're continuing that conversation with you and addressing your questions. So Michelle, if we can do one more question and then wrap it up, I think that'd be great.
Okay, I just want to make sure, like, Caroline, are you done? You feel? Yeah, okay.
I think that's probably about the best I'm gonna get.
Okay.
After 4 years.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead now and pass the mic over to Miss Hannah again, so she can just take us all home.
Okay. Before we say our thank yous and our good nights, I just want to put one more little thing on the plate. Do you realize that there is a homeless shelter placed and endorsed by New York State, not even a mile away from the elementary school? So I want you to put that on your plate too when Ms. Karen was giving you the rundown on what was tested and what was not tested. I'm sure that the homeless shelter was not included in that study. So I want to tell you thank you very much for showing up for this question and answer session with BLARG, that we are going to hold you to your word of getting the answers back from the team of all the questions that we did not get answers to. And we hope that you can sincerely consider this an environmental injustice issue and bring that more to the forefront and more to the plate, and to encourage our town officials to be more transparent in the efforts to communicate with our community. If that's within your power, then I'm going to leave that where it lays and say thank you very much. We are looking forward to hearing back from you without pulling of the teeth at your say so. And thank you. And everyone on the call, thank you very much. Thank you for sticking with us for such a long length of time. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. I am a little disheartened because I expected more thorough answers, but this is the beginning. And this is a fight that we're not about to give up on. So thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thanks for having us.
Good night, sir.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, and good night,
Thank you
everybody.
all.